All righty, boys and girls, welcome back to your regularly scheduled episode of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue Show with your hosts, Alex and Chris Sweepstakes Condit, your American villain voices, and as always, the lukewarmest of lukewarm opinions. In case you didn't catch that subtle hint, please go follow the socials. Go listen to our last episode on Spotify, on Apple, on Amazon Music, on YouTube. We had an amazing interview with Doug and Paul.
Doug Wright and MBE and Paul Faulkner.
Don't give it away. Make them go find out. They would be curious about the names Paul and Doug and be like, what Paul and Doug could they be talking about? Chris,
I disagree with that strategy.
I'm trying to market here.
I disagree with that strategy entirely.
Douglas Wright, MBE, Birmingham legend, and Paul Faulkner, obviously former CEO of Aston. We had an unbelievable interview with those guys. And there is a secret that was announced towards the end of the episode that Chris and I were not aware of. But you're going to want to go listen to that. And you're going to need to go check out and follow our socials, not just the episodes, because I was just spending before we hopped on this, doing some research to figure some legal regulations. And that's all.
Meeting with our legal team on that one?
Yes, that's all I need to say is that we need to tap the legal experts for this next one. So the bribes are already coming in. We cannot say that we will accept bribes. We cannot even say that will be a legal means of entry yet, but go check that one out. Chris, how have you been over the past 24 hours? Have you stopped geeking out?
I'm not sure. It's been great. The interview was just so much fun. And I mean, obviously, what a great pair of guys those guys are to even take the time to talk with us. Like Doug said, he met us in a stairwell at Villa Park, and it led to us just continuing to stay in touch with them and them with us, and led to that interview yesterday where they were so generous to give us over an hour of their time. And it was just such a great conversation from both sides, both Doug's and Paul's. It was really awesome. So that's really all I've been thinking about outside of the times that I've had to, be actually working for my job that I use to support this podcast. It's been a whirlwind, and it's been fun. And I really look forward to everybody tuning into that episode, because I think it was one of our best.
Yeah, and genuinely, I think we got some really good insights out of those guys of what it takes to not just be a local Villa supporter, but to really be in and around an operating club. You did a lot of research on previous interviews that Paul had done before. I listened to a couple. Like I really do think we got some novel information out of him, and great contributions out of Doug. Building onto that. So like there really is something new, no matter how long you've been an Aston Villa fan, no matter how many interviews of Paul's you've listened to, and over the past 24 hours, I mean, honestly, I'm glad you feel so positive about it. Like I could have talked to those guys for 3-4 hours.
Oh yeah.
Genuinely, I keep thinking of more questions I wanted to ask or topics I wanted to dive deeper on. So who knows? Maybe we'll make that like a every 6 month segment if
they're up for it.
If they're kind enough to keep offering their time. But I was texting you earlier today. Doug had an awesome little soliloquy about how when Randy Lerner came in, it was this change from the Ellis era where Villa was run like a business. They never forgot about the fans, but it was run by a business, and how much that elevated the club, the experience for supporters, all that kind of stuff. And I think that is so relevant to some of the conversations that we're having nowadays as Villa continues to elevate, and this tension between club versus business versus both. And it seems like for him, at least, and I think for you and I, that it needs to be both to be successful and to give everybody what they're looking for. And I wish we got to dive deeper on that. I wish we got to dive deeper on transfer policy. I wish we got to dive deeper on I mean, granted, it's my industry, so I kind of geek out about it a little bit more, but like how sponsorships come to be, all that kind of stuff. So maybe we'll get into that in future years. But what we're really here to talk about is one thing that they teased in the episode, which was that they hoped we got it out in time before West Ham played on Friday, because we really wanted to see how that squad looked. So let's look ahead to this West Ham game. We're kicking off the FA Cup weekend Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. And breaking news, a couple hours before this pod came out, Julian Lopetegui is out. Graham Potter is in. Gotta anticipate an interim manager for Friday. I'm sure Potter's not going to be on the sideline. So, Chris, before we get into where it went wrong for West Ham, because basically our entire preview has now gone out the window. Who knows who's going to play? What are you expecting on Friday?
So I'm really not sure. You wonder about new manager bounce, except they're not going to have the new manager. I thought the timing on this was a little strange. Like, to do it today was not the move I would have made, I don't think, if I were West Ham. If you were going to let him go, why wouldn't you have just done it immediately after your last game or the next morning? Whatever that may be. Why was there this 24 to 48 hour delay? It just doesn't, actually 72-hour delay. It doesn't make any sense to me to do that, and that delays everything. So now you're 2 days away from game day, and we're making a change at manager. Now, that change was always going to be coming with the way they were going, but I'm surprised. So I really have very little idea of what to expect on Friday. I think from West Ham's perspective, you could see some guys come out and try and play well because they want to impress, because that usually does tend to happen when a new manager comes in. But it's tough to say. They're coming. The game is at Villa Park, if I remember right. I had this in my notes, but it's home. So I'm not sure. Like, if I'm just not sure how the reaction is going to come from the squad itself. But as a potential bonus for West Ham, there's a decent chance that Aston Villa aren't really sure how to prepare for this now either. They don't know what's going to be coming at them, at least from a tactical standpoint. Obviously, the players are the players, but you don't know what changes are going to be made in this short window, if any.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what, I think they're going to go with a full-strength squad. Had it been Julian Lopetegui, like, he's fighting for his job. He needs a win. He needs a cup run. So he was going to go full strength.
Yep.
And when you come in as an interim manager, you kind of got nothing to lose, right? Put the first team squad out there. What are you saving guys for? It's not your career. So the only thing that we can say is whoever is healthy for West Ham, and we'll get into that later, I think we expect their best. With an interim manager, it is interesting. To your point, you're trying to kind of play for the next guy. We saw this with Aston Villa's last interim manager, right? We won one game 4-0 and then got smashed by Newcastle 4-0 before Emery came in or something. Or maybe that was the one before that. But like, at some point, you see both, right? There are interim managers that come in and get a win, and there are other ones that come and get smashed. I think the natural inclination is to say manager sucks, team's devoid of confidence, like this is going to be easy. But I don't necessarily think that's the case. You're playing a team with nothing to lose. And so it really comes back to our question that we'll get to later of like, how important do you take this as Aston Villa? But like you, I don't necessarily know what to expect.
Right.
It's interesting because I think this kind of pivots into what went wrong for them. You would think that an interim would probably just continue what they've been doing. And while, yes, there's been somewhat of a consistent formation, one of the biggest things that I've seen as blame for where this went wrong is the fact that Lopetegui never really seemed to institute a system or style of play or any sort of tactics. Apparently, they spent very little time on the field working on tactics and setup and all that kind of stuff, which is, I don't know, maybe stereotypically surprising for a Spanish manager.
Yeah.
And what it ultimately netted out as was they were just leaking goals for fun.
Yep.
4th, 5th worst defense in the league, 39 conceded. And they were a little unlucky. They underperformed their expected goals by 4. And, they gave up maybe 3 more than you would expect them. But like, that doesn't jump them from 15th to 7th. right?
Right.
That
Yeah.
they're still down there somewhere. They're still performing very poorly. And so I don't know. What do you think in terms of where this went wrong for West Ham? Anything beyond that?
So the first thing I wrote down in my match preview notes was like they don't score and they concede a ton. So that is a major problem, right? Like I don't care who you are. When that happens, you're going to be in trouble. I never, and I think I remember us talking about this when the signing occurred or at the first of the season. I never understood Nicholas Fulkrug, and I still can't say his name well. I remember struggling with his name in the first pod as well this season, but I never understood that as a signing. Had David Moyes still been there, I would have gotten that entirely. It made a lot of sense. So he never really fit in. He hasn't been healthy. They have no one up front now that can really score. Like Jared Bowen to me is the biggest threat, or is one of, I should say, not necessarily the biggest, but one of the biggest threats for them coming forward. And he's not going to be a guy that you can count on to bang in goals every week or every couple of days. It's just the squad is not built well. And I actually think that this kind of reflects well on David Moyes because he very clearly got more out of these guys than some others can, So
And
I
they
just
didn't
think,
like him for style of play. They
yeah.
hired the sexy Spanish manager, and they still don't have a style of play. Like
Well,
grass
you
isn't
need
always
players,
greener.
I mean, again, it seems to be like a Frankenstein monster of players that don't necessarily really fit together. And they've had some big losses, in terms of guys that have left. But it's an interesting way. Like if you look at teams where they've sold players off, Brighton's, Aston Villa, for that matter, where you've lost major pieces. Those teams have either improved, although in Villa's case, there was a period where we really sank, but then went right back up. But Brighton, right up there. Brentford, right up there. Teams that have sold players, important players, off and continue to succeed. West Ham can't seem to get it. And I mean, I don't think they're going to be relegated or anything like that. I think they're going to be safe based on how far down the rest of the league is, the teams below them. But it would be a real struggle to be a West Ham fan right now and watch this week in and week out. And I mean, we can relate back to it when we were in that position,
Sure.
before we made the drop.
Yeah, I think I'll double back a little bit to what you said about Fulkrug and the signings and selling on it and all that kind of stuff. I think you're right that this probably indicates some issue in, let's say, the scouting and analytics department more than anything, because it's not just Fulkrug. They got 100 million for Declan Rice,
Yeah.
and talk about how they've poorly reinvested that. Let's look at this year alone. Fulkrug, he does have 2 goals and 1 assist, but it's only 3 starts. Manager doesn't want to play him. Luis Guilherme hasn't really worked. 4 appearances off the bench. Guido Rodriguez played maybe half the games. Crescencio Somerville, he's got 19 appearances, only 7 starts, 1 goal, 1 assist. Like all this money, they spent 120 something, I think, over the course of the summer. And other than Max Kilman from Wolves, who's played started every game for them, none of the other ones have really shown up. And you talk about then the analytics that leads into tactics and how you play and how you set up. One thing that Villa can point to with our poor defensive record, which is not as bad as West Ham's,
Right.
is that we've had this rotating door in the back. Konsa's out right, Konsa's back, Carlos is in, Carlos is out, Pau Torres is in, Mings is in, Dean, Matz, whatever. Bogard at right back. Like we've had so many guys start across the back line.
Yeah.
When you look at the Premier League for West Ham, you have Kilman, 20 starts out of 20. Wan-Bissaka, 18 starts out of 20. And then Palmieri, 17 starts out of 20. Like, they've had consistent guys in that back line, but clearly the organization is just not there.
Yeah. And I don't know what that comes down to, whether it's the players, the manager, a combination of both is probably the most likely. But there's no question that this has really failed. And the larger problem is for a team like West Ham and a club like West Ham, when you miss like this, when you miss this badly on the $100 million payout, because that's really what that is, right? For Declan Rice,
Sure.
if you miss this badly, now you're talking about PSR concerns going forward because the team continues to sink down the table. I'm not suggesting that. I haven't looked at their books. I'm just saying it wouldn't surprise me if down the line they run into something like this because of lack of revenue and things like that. They do have a sweetheart deal on the stadium, but that doesn't count toward PSR anyway, in terms of revenue loss or anything like that. So it's going to be interesting to me to see what they do going forward, because right now they're kind of stuck in this spot with these players, because who's going to buy these guys now? You're going to sell them at a loss if it comes down to it. And I'd be interested to see how this all came together, because like I said, the best description I can come up with for this team is a Frankenstein monster of players that are all just kind of cobbled together, and they don't seem to have a recruitment strategy that bleeds through the whole team. It just seemed to be picking this guy here and that guy here and this guy here. That's my take.
I completely agree. So let's put that monster aside for a second and look at the monster that is Aston Villa right now. And I guess my initial question to you is, if you're Unai Emery, how seriously are you taking this match? Because we look at, it clearly did not go all out against Crystal Palace. Came close, but ultimately lost to, what people say is an opportunity for a trophy. I think you and I agreed with the decision not to go all out there.
Right.
And now we've got the FA Cup. The schedule opens up a little bit. And as Paul Faulkner said, for another plug to our last episode, as he said in the episode, like, there are Villa fans out there who say, I've seen us win the league. I've seen us win the European Cup. I've seen us win the League Cup. The one thing I haven't seen is the FA Cup. And, I've got a picture, an autographed picture from that FA Cup victory in the 50s on my wall right there. Is this one that you feel like Villa have to go for, or given the injury situation and just the lack of bodies, are you saying, I think this is another year where we got to pass up on it?
It's an interesting question, because you're doing so well in Champions League is also something that needs to be considered, because with that, Champions League is always going to be the priority, even though it's not likely that you're going to win it. But the financial benefit of it is so massive, and that cannot be ignored as much as we fans and a lot of fans in Birmingham want to ignore it. But looking at the reports from this week, talking about the game, like, Emi Martinez wants to lift that cup. He wants to win silverware with Aston Villa. So I have to think,
whatever.
What's that?
I said he said Champions League, but whatever.
Oh, I thought he was talking about the FA Cup too. I thought
he said he wants to lift silverware, but the quote that is really going around is like, he thinks we can win the Champions League.
Okay, but, well, I mean, I love that too. Why not both? But so, but I do think that, like, you play this game. I mean, in part, some of the guys are going to have to start because you don't have the bodies. But you play this game to win, because if you can get on a cup run, the players get excited, the fans get excited, and again, you have that chance at silverware, and it's one that, like you just said, Villa have not won in some 70 odd years. And I think, like, I remember back to the run that Paul mentioned again in our podcast earlier, where we got smoked in the final. But that was such a fun time, even though we were, near relegation places in the league at that point. So I also love a good cup run, but I'm trying to think how Unai Emery is going to approach it. And if you want my honest opinion, it's not a priority.
Interesting.
What do you think?
What do I think? I think you make an interesting point. I think that there is Unai Emery is aware of how the fans feel about everything. Mm-hmm. He's acknowledged it in plenty of interviews, whether it's frustrations with the recent losing run, like the importance of the Champions League, like all that kind of stuff, the importance of Bayern Munich. Like I think he's very tapped into the fan base. And so I think he'll realize that as much as there was frustration around the League Cup, the fan base was split enough that we didn't need to go for it. There were plenty of people like you and me who said this isn't a priority. Like go beat Bayern. I don't care about Crystal Palace. I think the waiting for the FA Cup is a little bit more in favor of like, we better effing go for this one, because if we go through this whole like great era and don't come out with any silverware, then like what was it for? And this is really our opportunity to do it. And frankly, I think like just due to the lack of bodies, you don't have much of a choice other than to go for it. And the only other thing that I'll add that would make me think that at least for this game, we can go all out is the fact that this isn't a midweek game. We haven't played since last weekend. We play the earliest FA Cup game on Friday, and then we don't play again until Wednesday for Everton. It's not a Tuesday. So, and Everton is so poor this year that you could even take your foot off the gas a little bit in that game and then gear up for Arsenal over the weekend. So, like, I think the games space out nicely that when you combine the fact that you don't really have a ton of bodies to rotate anyway, unless you just completely said we're going under 21s. Philogene's out the door. We'll get into things later. Like, I just don't really know who you rotate the lineup with, even if you wanted to. So now mentally, maybe he's telling the players, look, don't go all out, like don't hurt yourself. But I do expect something probably close to a pretty full strength lineup. And I think that we'll play pretty normal tactics. Rodgers back, last game of Duran's suspension. Right. So, so it'll be interesting to see what he does, but I actually do think that we'll see something closer to our full lineup.
Well, do we want to talk about lineups then, since we're dancing around it?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
All right, let's hear yours then.
All right. So I think Emmy in goal. I think that I just said no rotation. I think that Ned could potentially start unless he's out the door somewhere and there's a deal like really far along the line, just to give Matty Cash a break. Obviously, he's our only existing right back. But then I think you are going to see Konsa and Mings, especially with Carlos injured and potentially discussing an exit. Konsa, Mings, Ian Maatsen maybe starts at left back, which I don't really see as like a not going for it situation. We've said he's very capable. Onana probably plays defensive midfield, and then he'll be accompanied by, I'll say Yori. Maybe Kamara gets a little bit of a rest. Rodgers on the left, Ali in the middle, and I'll say Leon Bailey on the right. So I guess who plays the 10? Yori probably plays the 10, and Kamara is the other defensive midfielder. I don't really know.
You're bringing all three of our usual defensive sort of midfielders in the Chris Condit lineup, so to speak, the one I like the best.
Well, I mean, who else plays in the 10 or off the left? I guess you could go Rodgers 10, Ramsey left. That might be actually what we do. So I'll amend my lineup. Okay, I'll go through it one more time now that I've thought about it. So Emmy, Ned, Konsa, Mings, Maatsen, Onana, Tielemans, Ramsey left, Rodgers center, Bailey right, Ali up top.
Yeah. So I have some differences, and I think it goes to show how we think the boss is approaching it. I have Olsen, although he might be on his way out, so it could be Emmy. There's a rumor that he's heading out.
It's got to only be one of the two, right?
Yeah, I would think
Like
so.
they're talking about Gauchi making a move and they're talking about Olsen making a move, but I feel like we can only lose one of them.
We can only lose one. Yes. And you would think that Gauchi's would be alone because he's only 20 years old.
Yeah.
But Olsen, Cash, Kansa, Mings, again because of injuries and rumors. Matson I had as well. I have Onana and Yuri defensively, defensive mids. I have Rogers, Buendia, Ramsey, and Watkins.
So Rogers. So
Rogers
where
on the
are they
left,
setting up?
Buendia, Ramsey on the right.
Interesting. Ramsey on the right. I don't think we've really played Ramsey on the right.
Not recently. He has in the past. That was the only hesitation is I had him and Bailey written down there, so that I could see that one where Bailey comes in, especially since Bailey played so well in the last match. But I was just other than that, you're out of bodies. So
yeah, you did. I mean,
know,
youth teamers, I suppose, right? But yeah.
So that's that. We'll see what the lineup card looks like when it comes out on Friday, though. I do hope that no matter who's out there, that we can manage to win this game. So I'm going to give a prediction of it's difficult because we don't really know what West Ham's going to look like, but I'm going to go 3-1 Aston Villa.
My prediction was 2-1 Aston Villa. I want to say 2-0 because West Ham just doesn't score, especially recently.
Yep.
But we're still Aston Villa.
We concede. Yes.
Yes. So we are now going to move on from that match to the latest iteration of infiltrating the Villarati. And so again, this is where Chris goes deep into the reaches of Twitter and finds the latest news that we need to talk about. It's a lot of transfer stuff, but we do have a couple tweets outside of that we're going to chat about. But let's start with the transfers and the one that most recently came across all our desks right before this. Jaden Philogene out, permanent deal to Ipswich, £21 million plus add-ons. How do you feel about this deal, Chris?
Love it. I mean, I really wanted Jaden to work out here at Villa, but in terms of a pure business move, we bought him back for 15 million and had sold him for pure profit anyway. Bought him back for 15, and now we're selling him for 21 plus add-ons. That looks a peach of a deal to me, especially given the way he's played this season, where he's struggled to fit in the side. You'd be nuts not to make that deal for £21 million.
I can't believe that we got more for him than we're potentially going to spend on Daniel Malen.
Right.
I don't understand obviously I understand economics, but I don't understand the economics of football where Dortmund doesn't see us receive 21 million for Jaden Philogene when we're trying to buy an established Dutch international and not say, yeah, that we'll take more than that, please.
Yeah. Well, they are trying to get more than that. They are. That's where
it's the euro pound conversion, but it's gonna roughly wind up being maybe
it's not going to be much more
return of value and not much more. It's certainly not if you just looked at the two players and their output, what the difference in them would be.
Right. So you do have to assume that Malen's coming, and the word from the Villarati is.
I mean, what one of the two, him or Kolo Muani, we're getting a new winger.
Well, the word is that Malen's agreed to terms. That's what everyone has said. Yeah.
So now we just need to agree with Dortmund. We can agree to terms with him all we want. They need to accept the bid. But I agree with you. We said this in the last episode talking about Jaden Philogene. It just seemed like a step up a little too far for him. Obviously, we believed in him based on what he did in Hull, championship level. It's a big step up from championship to Champions League, and clearly he needs to kind of go back. I'll be interested if there's another buyback clause in there if he goes to Ipswich and shows out. But I'll be sad that it never worked out. But if we get someone like Malen or Kolo Muani in, great. And as you said, seems to be Daniel Malen. Keep your eyes peeled for an announcement there.
Yep.
Let's now go from the wingers to the center backs. So Another deal that is gaining a lot of traction that seems to indicate another deal is on the way is Diego Carlos out to Turkey for about 10 million pounds. Feels like good business to me, assuming that we're bringing in another center back, not just another defender. We don't have updates on Silva or Ashkan, but the latest rumor is Milan Skriniar from Paris Saint-Germain, obviously on huge wages. I'm not really sure how we make that one work. 29 years old, but solid player. And then other people are saying that he's going out so that we can fund the Oscar Mingueza deal, 25-year-old right back from Celta Vigo. So, Chris, why don't you talk about like the defense in general and how you feel about, all these guys?
Yeah. So I think I agree with you that 10 million for Diego seems a good deal for us if we have a center back to play. That's going to be the largest issue, because you cannot possibly send him out now without somebody behind him.
No, you have two center backs.
Yeah. And you mentioned I'm going to screw this name up too. Skriniar as well from PSG. From everything I've read, his wages are astronomical. And so I don't know how that works. But like we've talked about before, PSG are not in a good place financially. So we may be able to get him more on the cheap so that they can dump his wages. But then if we try to redo his deal, he's never going to take less money. So that's kind of a messy situation to me. Go ahead. Did you have something to add there? Okay, I thought I saw something from your face. My bad.
I was going to, but you're going on, so I'm gonna let you go, and then I'll.
No, go ahead. Yeah, no, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I guess I don't have a ton to add. The only thing that I would say is, like, from the options that we've seen, I would still prefer Silva. A right footer who I think is young, could build behind Konsa, but experience playing on the left side. So with Pau out, I think he provides more versatility to go for both of those. And I think when you talk about like his fee but low wages versus Skriniar, maybe low to no fee but high wages, probably winds up evening out. So I'll take the 21-year-old over the 29-year-old, especially if we're talking about someone who's going to be a backup on either side, right back or center back. So that's where my head is at. I think the lack of updates for Silva, though, make me think that might be an agent that just kind of threw something out there to try and build up some hype. I do think that someone has to be coming in if we're accepting that Carlos offer. We must know that something is agreed.
Absolutely. And the old January weather balloon is what I like to call those, just where we're seeing what's out there. But so in terms of the right back situation, I'm not sure. Like, we've talked about it a million times. They need something there too. We cannot go this window without signing someone, especially if Ned goes out on loan. But even if he doesn't, he's not playing, and what we currently have is not working. And in terms of just the setup, the time guys are playing, and all those things. And Oscar Mingueza, I'm so bad at these names. I need European-based names. I'm much better at those. But
are you saying that Spanish is not European-based?
What's
racist?
that?
Are you saying that Spanish is not European?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I should
Anglo names.
I need more Anglo names. That's exactly right. Yes. But although I'm not too bad at much of the like Eastern Bloc as well, because they're pretty close to Polish.
You just fumbled Skriniar. What are you talking about?
Oh, I did fumble Skriniar. I did.
You're not putting yourself in glory this episode, man.
I'm distracted. But so I'm not sure about that deal either. Like there's a lot of smoke around that one right now. But if you remember a week ago, there was a lot of smoke around Silva. So I'm not sure how much we can take legitimately yet. But all I can tell you is some sort of move needs to be made at right back. Otherwise, we're going to be in a world of hurt here come February.
Yeah, Mingueza feels like Alex Moreno, but on the right-hand side.
Okay.
He is more typically a right wing back than a right back, plays in midfield. You look at his comps on FBref and who scored, like he's being compared with midfielders, not defenders. And when you actually compare him to defenders, His attacking stats are through the roof, much like Alex Moreno's were, who we got, kind of on a bargain out of Spain. His defensive stats, though, every single one, tackles, interceptions, blocks, clearances, aerials won, all those per 90. His highest one, he's in the 35th percentile. Everything else is in the teens. So, like, he does not defend. And if we're talking about getting a right back who's going to solidify the right-hand side and prevent Villa from just conceding goal after goal after goal after goal, unless you're telling me Unai Emery is going to completely flip the system where all of a sudden the right back is bombing on and we're telling Luka Dean to sit, which that doesn't benefit him or Ian Maatsen.
No.
I don't understand how this deal benefits what we're trying to do.
That's a really good insight.
It's how Celta Vigo play, though, because they're going to replace him, the rumors are, with a right winger that they want to move back. They're looking for attacking out of that right wing back spot. So I don't see how Mingueza fits or helps. 20 million, like, that's a decent out clause for a 25-year-old, talented right back. But, like, I just don't know what he does for Villa. The other thing that I just want to say with him is, like, you sent them to me. We all saw them. The Matty Cash per 90s with the graph that FB Ref does with Mingueza, and then the dude from Botafogo or whoever who we were looking at. Like, come on. They're different leagues. Like, they play differently. You cannot tell me that someone's per 90 stats in the Brazilian league are going to compare to a right back's per 90 stats in the Premier League. And just because his is bigger, it means he's a better right back. Can we just stop? Like, I deal with statistics and numbers every single day of my career. Like, I know how to make statistics look better than they are, and it's stupid.
Well, so even that, as I sent it, though, like, as we talked about it, that graphic did not, like, I said to you, based on this graphic, Aston Villa fans are going to hate Mingueza. Like, if they hate Matty Cash, they're going to hate Mingueza even more.
Does the same, just more.
Like, he's a more attacking Matty Cash. That's, or at least it looks like.
Look,
I don't.
If he comes, there's a plan for him, and so I will withhold judgment. All I can say right now is, from what I see, I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, that's why you always have to wonder about these things in January. There's going to be a lot of smoke, not necessarily a lot of fire. But speaking of smoke, because it's everyone in the championship has been linked to him at this point. Louis Barry, he has been linked to about 17 different sides in the championship at this point, which is the ideal place for him right now to loan him on or sell him outright to the championship, and give him a chance to play against a level of competition that's a little closer to where you would expect him to be at this moment. So he's been linked. I mean, I don't want to list them all. The most recent one I saw today was Hull City and Millwall, but he's been linked to just about everybody. Have
you seen a fee listed yet?
No.
Yeah,
no. I would hope to get a decent fee for him, because you're never going to get more than you are right now unless he starts tearing up the Premier League. But I think we all know how much confidence I have in that happening. So I would try and sell him on, if you're going to sell him, for a decent fee. And you can just tell them, hey man, he trained it, but we got him from Barcelona. That he's a former Barcelona youth. That means something. That's worth an extra $5 million. But so I have not seen any fees anywhere, but he's been linked everywhere. So either he's got a very active agent, or Aston Villa are really stoking the fire here and trying to get some competition ginned up among the clubs.
If you can get 10 million for a 21-year-old who has only ever played at League One level, I snap your hand off for that.
Yeah,
now, right. I did think it was interesting that when Emery was asked about Louis Barry, he said that he kind of cooled the "we're looking to sell him." He was like, he's going to come back. We're going to see if he fits in. Is a loan move right? Maybe a sale, but like, want to get him higher level experience, all that kind of stuff. Some of that could be, just transfer gamesmanship, trying to raise the fee a little bit. We don't want to get rid of him. We want to keep him around. He's a good player. We think highly of him, whatever. But I did think that was interesting,
Mhm.
just how much he seemed to cool on selling him outright. To your point, I'm not keeping him around the first team, loan or sell to the championship. But I think he needs more experience somewhere in
Yeah,
between.
I mean, he's even though we need bodies, I don't think he's near good enough yet. I mean, he was doing well in League One, but we're talking about a monster gap between League One and the Premier League, and beyond that, Champions League, all those fun things.
Oh
So,
yeah.
I just I think if you got 10 million, if you got a $10 million offer for him, £10 million offer for him, you take that today, yesterday. Um, so, but we'll see what happens with him. I don't expect him to be here come February. I'll say that
No,
much.
me either. Absolutely
Yeah.
not. Now, someone who might be here come February is someone who still has, I mean, it hasn't been that long, but such a fond place in my heart. Probably always will be one of my favorite villains. Douglas Luiz is rumored to be coming back to the Premier League, 35 to 40 million. So what, a 20 million hit on what we got for him in the summer. At least in terms of total value when you take
Mhm.
out Barrandia and Illing Jr., Sammy Ills. I guess two questions for you, Chris. Would you have him back at Villa? And if not, how do you feel about him going to another Premier League club?
So to answer the first question, I love him back, but not. I don't know that that price makes sense, and I don't know where he plays. Those are the two issues right now because, like, who does he step in for? Unless you're talking about moving Tielemans up to the 10 all the time and really reshuffling the midfield, even with the injuries. Uh, where does he play on a regular basis? Like, who does he get in over on a regular basis? Kamara or Tielemans?
That'd be kind of exciting. You know,
Yeah,
you have Kamara and Onana sitting, you have Dougie next to them, Tielemans in the 10, Rogers on the left, Bailey on the right. It keeps Rogers from clogging the middle and gives him a little more space to operate, and Ramsey a little bit more of a push to kind of win a space. I mean,
yeah,
it's depth, but are you spending 40 million euro in January for depth?
right.
Loan to
Uh,
buy, maybe.
yeah. The rumored club that he's going to answer your other question about um, how would I feel? I mean, it'd be mixed feelings, you know. I'd be sad in a way because I will always think of him in a claret and blue shirt, number 6. Um, but I also like he's really struggled to see the pitch at Juve, and I want to see him play. I was watching, was it the Super Cup, I think, last week, and he got in for about 7 minutes, and that was about it. It was probably a little longer than that, maybe like 13, 15 minutes. But to see a guy that was a week in, week out starter for so many years for Aston Villa that was not able to see the pitch at Juve is sad to me. So I would be happy for him that he would be back playing, presumably if he came to Forest, and playing a significant role. And I would expect that, you know, when he came to Villa Park, he would get a really nice ovation because everybody, I think everybody reasonable knows that he didn't actually want to leave. He specifically said no deals to Premier League clubs. So I'll always have a great deal of respect for him for that. And we've talked about, you and I both love his game and love what he brought to the club and all those things.
He said no Premier League clubs. He ran back to the Premier League pretty quick. And I'm not saying that he lied then. I do wonder the validity of that rumor. Because I don't think that it was given in a major interview. That was more something that was said that he said behind the scenes. There are plenty of other places he could go. Nottingham Forest is the latest rumor. I would be more okay if he went to Forest than if he went to City or Arsenal, because it would seem like they circumvented essentially not paying us to get him on the cheap 6 months later, and that would suck.
Arsenal have been linked to him for, about 8 years now, it feels like.
And if you saw the news today, Party has a whole new host of legal issues. So Arsenal is going to be looking for a new six.
That's unnamed Premier League player, Alex. That's what all those reports said.
I will say the quiet part out loud. We all know who it is. So, yeah, to your point, would I take him back at Villa? Yes. I think that there are interesting things that you could do with him as a player. Do I take him back for that fee? Probably not. I think 40 million spent between a center back, a right back, potentially a winger is much more important than spending it on yet another central midfielder, where I think that we're actually pretty strong and we're not really dealing with the injury crisis that we are in other areas of the pitch. So if we could figure out a loan and then, a buy in the summer for him, maybe my perspective changes. I just want to say that we should do it just to prevent him from going to another EPL club. If he wants to go to Bayern or Dortmund or PSG or somewhere in Spain, fine.
PSG ain't got no 40 million.
I'm just saying, like any other country, I would be fine. But back to another Premier League club would just that'd be a knife.
Ajax. He can go to Ajax.
He's not going. Good.
Well, he's not going to PSG either. But you're just throwing things out there.
And none of these other countries are in on him either. I'm just saying, like, I want to see him go to a good high level club in a different country. That's it.
Yeah, I got you. Just
not here. Just not here. Yeah. Now, beyond the transfer news, again, we're still infiltrating the Villarati. This is just what goes on in the online Villaverse. Let's move ahead to an interesting article that's been making the rounds over the past day. I'm kind of interested why it's come back up. Jacob Tanswell says that we're too soft, essentially. We don't surround the referee enough. We don't engage in the dark arts. Unai Emery, until recently, was pretty passive in interviews when asked about the refs or the league or anything like that, and he's gotten a little bit more fire, but it hasn't necessarily passed along. Chris, this is a story that's like followed us since the Dean Smith era. Everybody said that Dean Smith was so nice, so his team was so nice, and like that's why decisions went against us. So I don't think that this is something that's necessarily new under Unai Emery, but it does seem to be now a story that's trailing Aston Villa through multiple managers. I don't really have a tee up for you other than like, what'd you think when you read this?
So I will only take issue. I'll take issue with one thing. You can't say that Villa don't do the dark arts well when you have like the master of the dark arts in net in Emi Martinez, right? Like he's the best at it. He gets yellow cards constantly for delaying and different things. So that part is I'll put that one aside. I will say that Aston Villa do not surround the ref and make a big fuss a lot. And one of the things that Tanswell brings up in his piece is he talks about the Morgan Rogers goal in the Champions League against Juve, where, if you celebrate harder and don't worry about the officials, maybe it lends them to believe that you're not doing something wrong. The immediate reaction from Rodgers was to turn and look at the ref to see if he was holding up an offside flag. So maybe some of that is true. I don't know. Like we've talked about a million times, officials are mortal men who are flawed and have psychological things that they think about. They're not robots, But like, I don't think that surrounding the ref and constantly being a pain in the ass is going to get you a lot of calls. I think that's one of the reasons that Arsenal have so many calls go against them, because nearly every single call for 90 minutes and then pre and post game, the players and their manager do nothing but complain at officials or complain about the balls or whatever they want to complain about that day. So like, I don't think the two things necessarily go hand in hand. And I think that some of it is just bad luck in terms of calls going against you. Some of it is that it's just the way the referee saw the game at the time. And I can't really say that, yes, I want my guys to be surrounding officials on every call, and I want Unai Emery to be in the fourth official's ear constantly. And I actually kind of like that Emery tells his players and tells the media, for the most part, that's not the focus. That it's very rare that he blames officials for matches. He's for results in matches. He's said more recently than he has in the past, but even then he always couches it with something like, but we didn't do this, or we didn't execute this. It's never the reason that a match was lost or won. So I appreciate that, because I think that's the correct way to go about it. We can't control the officials. We can only control what happens on the pitch. Now, you and I, and especially me, can get angry all we want at the calls on the field. But I do appreciate that the team does not.
You're such an honorable Midwesterner. So I think there's a middle ground. Villa are at the very, very, very passive end of the spectrum. And maybe passive isn't the right word, but yeah, they embody Emery's idea of, we're going to outplay you. It doesn't matter. We got to get on with it. Everything that we criticize Arteta for, where it's never his team's fault, where it's always the ball, the referee, the whatever. And that sort of seeps into his team's mentality. We're the opposite. That, you know what? You can't complain about the ball. They had to play with the ball too. You can't complain about the ref. They had to play with the ref too, who made, equally bad calls.
Yeah, you can't complain about injuries, right?
Everybody has injuries. Yeah. Now, I'm not going to go so far to say that we should be Arsenal, but I think that Tanswell makes a good point that you at least need to balance out what the other team is doing. So if the other team sends 5 guys, you send 5 guys. If the other team is barking at the ref, you have to bark at the ref and give him the other side of it. Because I do think that, to your point, refs are fallible. They're subject to psychology, like all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it can rise to a point where you say, all right, you know what? F you, like, I'm going to go against what you're asking me to do. But there is a point before you get there where you just feel like, I just want this to stop. Fine, I'll give it to you. And so I think we need to hit that sweet spot to just balance out whatever impact the other teams are having. If you're playing Arsenal, let them be a-holes and let them turn the ref against them. But if you're playing someone in the middle, I think you got to kind of meet them where they are. And I think that Tanswell makes a good point about that. He constantly highlights Pau Torres, actually, as someone who goes over in a lot of these situations to talk to the referee, and no one kind of backs him up. So that's probably what I would say until the rules change, you've got to do. Emery at the top. I don't think it doesn't help us that John McGinn is our captain, who's a fairly fight through it, honest individual. We saw it last week with Ollie Watkins. He never dives, and we've talked in the past about how he never gets penalties called on him the way that Harry Kane does, because he won't throw himself on the ground. Fought through 2 challenges last week that, at least the second one, maybe borderline red, the way the guy tried to pull him back when he was on the break, doesn't go down. There are still little instances where you could engage it in the dark arts or in a little referee manipulation to try and get something to go your way without being Arsenal. There's a middle ground.
Yeah. I would also like the rule to change where we go to the Euro thing. That's what I want.
I was just about to say, I think what we should clarify, though, for anybody listening to this, and we've touched about this a lot, we can post the receipts. We have both said surrounding the referee is annoying. They should implement the Euro system where only captains can talk. And I think that then eliminates most of this conversation.
Yep.
Still doesn't change the Morgan Rogers, the Ollie Watkins, that kind of situation and that aspect of it. But at least the surrounding the ref to get him to call things in your favor, it would remove that element from it.
I don't think that's good for the game, by the way. I'm not just saying that in the Premier League. Like, think about that in any other sport. That almost never happens, right? In American football, baseball, basketball, name it.
LeBron?
Right?
Are you kidding me?
No. I'm talking about the surrounding of the official. I'm talking about I'm talking about the entire
here every single time.
No.
Not the entire team.
I'm talking specifically about the entire team surrounding the referee on the court or the field. Yeah, I'm not talking about guys complaining at the ref. That happens all the time. I'm talking about the instance where 10 guys will be grouped around the referee screaming and yelling. That almost never happens in any other sport. And I say almost because it does happen, but almost never, right? And like that level of intimidation with up to 10 grown men grouped around you, it's not okay. And it's just not how I think the game needs to be played or portrayed. So I like the Euro system of only the captains speak, or a designated player if the captain is a goalie. And if anyone else does, it's a yellow. Like, I love that. Yeah. And Arsenal would lose players in the first 5 minutes. It'd be great. They'd have guys on 2 yellows in 6 minutes. It'd be awesome. I'd love to see it.
I don't know that the ref would ever give a second yellow, but I would love it if they did. I mean, now we're getting back into psychology.
Right.
All right, Chris. Any other Villarotti, Villaverse moments that you wanted to talk about?
I think that's it.
Okay. Yeah. Let's. I was going to say the only other one that I would have thrown on here was the Taylor conversation, but I think that one's been beat to death already online. We don't need to add our commentary to that. So we are going to close out today with something semi-related to Taylor and Jhon Duran, and that is our usual demanding of apologies. Chris, who are we demanding an apology from today?
Unfortunately, Alex, it's a usual suspect today. FA, I want my apology. Cunha, 5 games for assaulting a staff member at Ipswich. 5 games. That's what he was suspended. It was originally 6. It got reduced to 5 because he wrote some bogus letter, allegedly, probably written by someone else, allegedly, and offered to replace the staffer's glasses because he broke them when he physically assaulted the man who works for Ipswich. Like, that's a crazy sentence to say, right? And for that, he was suspended 2 more games than Jhon Duran, who, whether you believe it or not, may have accidentally stepped on a player in the course of the game
and kicked a water bottle
after an awkward challenge and kicked a water bottle. Yeah. Like, so water bottles lives matter is, I guess, the message from the FA here. I don't understand this punishment. I don't, like, you're never going to get me to understand how that potentially accidental stomp is worth 3 games, and physically assaulting another human being intentionally that isn't on the pitch is worth 5 in total. And a reduction, the 3 for the red, right? 3 for the red card, 2 additional games instead of 3. Like, I would have thought that would have been a minimum 10-match ban. You put your hands on somebody who works for the club, like, you're out. I'm not saying he did the flying kick. Who was that did the in the 90s who did? Yeah, like, it's not that, but it's not good,
And what did Mitrovic do to get 8 a couple years ago?
Oh, I can't remember. Jeez.
Did he touch a referee? Did he push a ref?
I think that was it. But that, like, you can't do that. And to say that's only worth 2 more games than a standard red card, and we can take Jhon Duran out of it, even though that's the point of this apology, but to say that's only worth 2 more games than getting a red card, that's Crazy. He assaulted a man. That's crazy. That's crazy, FA.
The only thing I'll add on to that is the fact that the panel even said he came up with his excuse for it. The guy was menacing. The guy was near Nori, my teammate. He put his hands on me and wouldn't let go of my jersey, so I only pushed him to get him off, and I happened to hit his face in the process. He was the one who escalated. And the commission literally said, "We don't believe your excuse. You're making it up."
We all saw the video.
They said they found it implausible to use their direct quote, which to me says you're full of it and you're coming up with something. But they still found his apology sincere. That's so oxymoronic. I don't understand. And I don't understand how that then becomes we're going to decrease the suspension if we think that you legitimately pushed, elbowed, and broke this man's face. Glasses.
His glasses, yeah.
And so to bring this to the Jhon Duran conversation and why we're demanding an apology, Jhon Duran, first off, once he was charged, everyone thought, oh, he's getting more games. It's guaranteed he's getting more games. And we haven't actually heard anything one way or the other. He might not get more games. They might not actually find that it's worthy of additional suspension. Maybe he gets a fine instead of a suspension or something like that. But the simple fact that assaulting a staffer is only worth 2 games, how is kicking a water bottle in frustration half the severity of that? I don't know how you quantify severity, but no matter how you do it, that just doesn't pass the smell test for me.
Nope.
So
I agree.
FA, like, we need an apology. As we say every time to everyone we demand an apology from, you are more than welcome on the Red, White, Claret, and Blue show to come defend your position. We will give you an open forum. We will even give you the benefit of the doubt, and we will have a conversation about it. But FA, slide tackle into the DMs because we ain't having it right now.
There it was. Haven't seen that one in a while. But no, I've said enough. I cannot understand how we're even talking about Jhon Duran potentially getting a longer suspension when another player for another team, and I'm not saying there's an anti-Villa bias or anything like that, but assaulted a person, and it was 2 games. So, like, if then kicking a water bottle should be a $10 fine, if you ask me. Like, if that's the scale we're working on. If assaulting someone, and by the way, that man did not intimidate Cunha. I saw that video. That guy was in his 40s or 50s, not in good shape. No one who plays professional sports is intimidated by that man. Like that, come on.
Yes.
Get out of
here. No
here.
anti-Villa bias, just total ineptitude.
Yeah, just
that's
ridiculous.
all it comes down
to. So I expect a £10 additional fine for Jhon Duran. Like that.
Yeah,
that seems fair given the scale.
Replace the water bottle. That's sure.
Yep.
Fine. Maybe he needs to go pat in the divot that he kicked out of the grass. All right. Well, I got a burger to eat. We got a Cavs Thunder game to watch. I will actually wish you the best and hope you perform better than the Knicks did against the Thunder last week. And with that, we're on to Friday, my friends. Up the Villa. Hi, Mom and Dad.